This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Hey, Marcus Housewither here. In this midweek episode, I'm super excited to take you on a journey into the arena of the new commercial space race kicked off by SpaceX. In this one, we are going to be discussing some of the key well-established companies and also some startups whose innovative revolutionary designs are contributing to the rekindling of new interest once again in space exploration, captivating our imaginations in the process. I'll close out this episode with a quick review of Starship, so be sure to check that out. For now, let's jump into it.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Now, I don't think it is any stretch of the imagination that the establishment of Space Exploration Technologies Incorporated, or SpaceX, was the beginning of a paradigm shift in the attitude towards human spaceflight and the longer-term vision of securing the future of humanity's survival as a species beyond this very planet. So out of a seemingly lofty aspiration to put a greenhouse on Mars, a man with a singular vision set off what would ultimately be the catalyst for the most revolutionary private sector commercial space program ever embarked on. That man, of course, was Elon Musk, who birthed a concept called Mars Oasis, which would land a small greenhouse on Mars with the dual aim of reigniting public interest in space exploration once again, and also hoping to see NASA's funding be increased. So yes, that's right, Elon wasn't originally looking to start a new business at that stage. The idea was to buy a cheap Russian rocket and use it to send some plants to Mars. He first flew over to Russia to buy a refurbished intercontinental ballistic missile, which isn't something on most people's shopping list when they travel, but this key moment in history changed the future direction of the Mars greenhouse concept. With the Moscow meeting not going so well, Musk headed home seemingly empty-handed, but not dissuaded. His mind abuzz with ideas, Elon decided he could build the rocket himself, and it would be much cheaper with reusability at its core. SpaceX was founded just a few months later in early 2002. We can then just fast forward almost 2 decades and a constant design evolution of its spacecraft, and here we are with the growth of SpaceX itself as an organization. It is easy to forget just how much this one company has changed the landscape, not only with respect to spacecraft design and safety, but also the cost of putting payloads and humans into orbit. All of this rapid development has certainly created excitement for the general public as well. With the revenue stream now in place from services such as Starlink, resupply missions to the International Space Station, and now even Crew Dragon, humanity now looks set to embark on the long overdue goal of interplanetary travel and colonization of another planet. Over the past year especially, we have been paying much closer attention to Boca Chica and the development of the Starship and the Super Heavy booster prototypes. We have now become accustomed to the crazy speed of production lately, with sites such as 2 Starships at the launch site causing quite a thrill. All the while, we continue to see Falcon 9 boosters landing successfully over and over again as the Starlink constellation of internet satellites continues to grow. When asked about his motivation for entering the space industry, Elon Musk explained that he felt that there was insufficient progress and investment being made to make space travel a reality. He said that he wondered why we weren't making progress with getting people back to the moon, and where were all the space hotels that we were promised in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So in those early days, it would take 6 years for SpaceX to reach orbit, an achievement that Elon has said in the past is extremely difficult. To reach this milestone, SpaceX had to overcome many challenges, and Elon knew that while speed and perfection are often enemies, giving up is not in the DNA of the company. SpaceX failed to reach orbit with their first 3 Falcon launch attempts, but fortunately on September 28th in 2008, Falcon 1 flight number 4 attained orbit for the very first time. This launch included the last of the funding for Falcon 1 development and launch activity. That just goes to show just how close SpaceX were to having to close up shop. As Elon said, fate liked SpaceX that day, so the 4th launch worked. If that hadn't have been the case, we wouldn't be witnessing all that we are seeing right now. The gates to the hopes and aspirations in space were now opened for SpaceX. The adventure was just about to begin. Several more years of development later, and the company had a new and better vehicle to show, the Falcon 9 first stage reusable booster. But what makes this vehicle so special? What sets Falcon 9 apart from current commercial competitors? Well, in a nutshell, it is the ability to send a payload into orbit and then have its massive core first stage return to Earth, followed by landing either on solid ground or on an autonomous drone ship. Achieving that awesome reusability, which has now become commonplace, allowed SpaceX to reduce the cost of getting mass to orbit. But it didn't end there. Along with the Falcon 9, SpaceX worked on the Dragon capsule to carry cargo and astronauts to the International Space Station. This was a feat that the entire industry was very skeptical about. I remember the plethora of comments and videos saying that this was all just a pipe dream. A private commercial company just can't do this. In under 1 year from the final Falcon 1 flight, Falcon 9 successfully launched a cargo Dragon capsule into orbit in December 2010. Just 2 years later, on a different mission, the Dragon capsule was launched and it berthed with the International Space Station, making it the first commercial spacecraft to do so. Of course, we know now that there are plans for other launch providers to follow suit with the reusability model as well. The very beginnings of SpaceX's history is extremely exciting to me, and a long time back we put in a load of work creating a music video showcasing SpaceX's achievements in those early days. That is actually one of my favourite pieces. A link to that is in the description, and thanks to everyone for the constant feedback that we get on that video. All of your support, liking, subscribing and sharing always helps videos like this one get out there, coming up onto 300,000 subscribers there now, which just blows my mind. Thank you to all of you. So yes, now that SpaceX has already been able to demonstrate that they can fundamentally reduce the time between missions due to their efficient approach to reusability and booster turnaround, what about all of the other companies that are out there that are working away, some not so much in the public eye? It is not too difficult to look around and see the growing number of new generation launch providers entering the private sector space industry with their sights set on a goldmine of launch opportunities. Those opportunities range from high demand small satellite launches, mega constellations, much larger payload markets such as interplanetary missions, as well as those with a view to providing an alternative destination to the aging International Space Station. After all, what is the point of having a human space flight rated rocket if you have nowhere to go, right? So Rocket Lab is the very first one we're going to talk about. These guys are a small satellite launch provider currently whose achievements we are very much enjoying sharing here on the channel. Recently though, it was announced that they will now develop a larger reusable rocket called Neutron with a multi-role design to cater for mega constellation launches and also much more, including cargo resupply and interplanetary missions such as heading to Venus. Now this is a goal often spoken of by Rocket Lab's founder Peter Beck, and this new vessel is also capable of supporting human spaceflight. This new venture is a fundamental shift in their commercial launch strategy, which hilariously caused Peter to eat his hat here just recently. This is what I love about this guy. Despite the incredible pressures that must come with this business, he can still convey fun and optimism to captivate all of us with their unique journey. This hectic pace of competition entering the private space sector market is ramping up very quickly indeed, and the Neutron announcement just goes to show how fluid the customer requirements are here, as we've seen recently as well with Blue Origin. Now, speaking of Blue Origin, they are a launch services startup of Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos with their launch vehicle New Glenn. This is a reusable rocket system designed to be a heavy lift vehicle to the usual custom required orbital altitudes, but also for missions to the moon and beyond, with its maiden flight now targeting late 2022, which is a year later than expected. Blue Origin is a classic example of the competitive nature of the private sector. Despite private investment in excess of $2.5 billion thus far, Jeff announced just recently that the launch schedule was refined to match the demand of Blue Origin's commercial customers. Blue Origin are also expected to provide BE-4 engines to United Launch Alliance for their new Falcon rocket, which is designed to replace the Delta IV and the Atlas V booster offerings. New Glenn is certainly sure to impress launch enthusiasts with 7 powerful BE-4 engines and an overall height almost on par with that of the Saturn V launch launch vehicle at 33 stories tall. Now, Jeff Bezos has of course stated before that when you look at expendable rockets today, the cost of propellant is only about 1% the cost of the entire mission. The remaining huge costs come from throwing that aerospace grade hardware away. With reusability, in theory, you can see a path to lowering the cost of access to space by a factor of 100. So yes, reusability and launch turnaround speed with low cost are absolutely critical to ongoing success and viability of the industry. So outside of that though, there are also less heard of companies that are starting to make waves in the market. Take Firefly, which is a private aerospace firm based in Austin, Texas, with some interesting launch options such as Firefly Alpha, which will be aiming for bi-monthly launches. Now this is a small satellite launch vehicle with the ability to lift 1 metric ton to low Earth orbit or 630 kilograms to a 500 kilometer sun synchronous orbit. This will also be capable of catering for rideshare customers as well. At the beginning of February this year, NASA announced that they had awarded Firefly around $93 million to deliver a batch of 10 science investigation and technology demonstrations to the moon in 2023. The Blue Ghost lander here will play a vital role in the Artemis program as NASA seeks out partners under the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative to conduct surface exploration activities. Now, these science payloads will ultimately clear the way for a sustainable human colony on the moon. This lander is capable of landing at almost any site on the near side of the moon, including the polar regions, which are of great interest, especially where water is frozen on the surface. With solutions like these, it is easy to see why NASA chooses commercial partners to take the lead here. Firefly also has a nifty ace up its sleeve with their space utility vehicle. This is essentially a space tug that will, for the very first time, transform telecommunication capability to include coverage to the far side of the moon. This is something that no agency currently has available to them, thus limiting those mission locations. So Firefly will certainly be very active in the future lunar economy with their current selection of launch options. Clearly, they have a very mature development strategy to see them enter the commercial arena with other organizations such as Relativity Space. Now, this company are constructing the first autonomous rocket factory and will also be providing launch services for its customers as well. They are a young startup launch provider with a rocket called Terran 1, which has a lift capacity of 1.25 metric tons. Relativity Space was founded at the start of 2015 by CEO Tim Ellis, who was a propulsion engineer at Blue Origin, along with co-founder and now executive advisor Jordan Noon, who worked at SpaceX on Crew Dragon and the Draco engines. These guys are not messing around. With the core of their business based on a 95% 3D metal printed launch vehicle, Terran 1 will have 100 times fewer parts than a typical rocket in the same class. They aim to eventually be able to create a launch vehicle from raw materials and then send it to the launch pad in 60 days with an approximate cost at this time of around $10 million per launch. The 3D metal printers were essentially invented in-house with the capability now to print a component up to 36 feet tall. This is truly a revolution in rocket design and manufacture. As another awesome example of this, the Aeon 1 engine itself can be printed in 1 month and it's got only 3 parts. Now that is crazy stuff. They have experimented a lot, pressing tanks to failure on many occasions, and they've had at least 13 engine versions test-fired over 300 times. The ability to 3D print these components, and just as importantly prove that these components work, leaves no doubt that this is going to change the industry dramatically. But I guess why is there so much demand coming up for access to space in the first place? In this age of technology, it's always a race for providers to deliver satellites for a variety of reasons. It could be GPS, internet access, climate monitoring, or overall research missions, but think of even more futuristic missions. Mining asteroids for precious metals maybe. How about space tourism in general? Well, we could introduce here Axiom Space. They are an infrastructure developer based in Houston, Texas. They are entirely privately funded and have raised $130 million so far since it was founded in 2016. In February this year, Axiom were able to secure another $150 million in a second funding drive. thrive. This clearly shows how confident the investors are in this emerging sector of the space industry. As other companies focus on satellite launches, Axiom's intent is to provide a destination to go to. Axiom Station will be home to space agencies, businesses, and individuals as NASA turns its focus to the Moon, Mars, and deeper space adventures. By opening the International Space Station to commercial partners, that allows for an easy transition from a government-run orbital platform to the world's first fully commercial space station. Just recently, NASA's Director of Commercial Spaceflight Development, Phil McAllister, has stated that they are still in the early stages of transitioning low Earth orbit from a government-dominated area to one in which the private sector takes the lead. The very first Axiom module is potentially headed to the International Space Station in late 2024. Once all of the Axiom modules are in place, it can eventually separate from the International Space Station entirely, which would then eventually be decommissioned. So yes, there are many of these other companies out there starting to break ground, but how can we even cover this even remotely without touching on Starship, which is a launch vehicle set to tower over other competitors, not just in size, but lift capacity. It has been in development now since 2018, and the prototype development and manufacturing program has already achieved several critical milestones. Starship SN4 became the first full-scale prototype to pass a cryogenic test, and the first full Starship tank to pass a static fire. SN5, which was almost identical, was the first to perform a successful 150-metre hop. SpaceX then did a 12.5-kilometre test flight with SN8 on the 9th of December in 2020, demonstrating incredible development speed right there. Elon Musk said on Twitter that a stable, controlled descent with body flaps would be great, transferring propellant feed from main to header tanks and relight would be a major win. Now, with that flight, understanding exactly how the body flaps control the pitch, the yaw, and the roll during the descent was super critical. Then we saw the relight, the flip, and almost a landing. That was an incredible achievement, and really nobody knew what to expect from that first flight. I think even Elon Musk was very surprised by that flight. After the many delays, SN8 successfully flew to that 12.5 kilometers in altitude before the final Raptor engine was shut down to begin the pitch down and the belly flop maneuver. The prototype remained perfectly under control during that first descent until a loss of pressure in the fuel header tank resulted in failure to push the vehicle fully vertical upon relight of the Raptor engines, resulting in that rough touchdown. Elon said that SN8 though did great, even reaching apogee would have been great, so controlling all the way to putting a crater in the right spot was just epic. A few days after the test flight, of course, SN9 was rolled down to the launch pad where it waited for its opportunity to fly. Just like SN8, the flight went perfectly, and at 10 kilometers in altitude, or just over 6 miles, the final Raptor engine was turned off, allowing SN9 to perform that same belly flop maneuver. Once again, a problem though, relighting one of the Raptor engines resulted in another rough landing. Without time to lose, SN10 underwent all the regular tests, and again, after some delays, SpaceX tried another test flight. The stage was set, the cameras rolling, microphones on, and multitudes of people were keenly focused on the events about to unfold at Boca Chica's launch site. The Raptor engines thundered to life and lifted the vehicle again to 10 kilometers, where we saw the final Raptor engine shut down. The descent again went perfectly, and for the first time a Starship prototype actually landed intact. But a few minutes later, while captivated onlookers like ourselves were all celebrating this incredible milestone, the prototype suddenly disassembled itself very rapidly. So many would wonder, well, are all of these exploding Starships what we want to see? Are the Starship prototypes perfect? Well, no, they're far from it, obviously, but they are, after all, just prototypes. The speed of development, production, and the ability to maintain this momentum even when design changes are needed makes SpaceX a pioneer in this new era of private space exploration. Elon has already set the goal for Starship orbital capability this year, as stated on a Joe Rogan podcast. Elon said here that this year he predicts that Starship will reach orbit. What an incredible event that will be. So yes, over the years, Elon Musk has achieved his goal of rocket reusability, driving down the costs for launch, and will eventually be putting space travel within close reach of the general population. So what does all of this mean anyway? Well, it is making many more of us look up towards the unknown, dreaming of what is right above our heads, waiting to be discovered. We are witnessing a new chapter in space exploration. Everyone involved in this is equally important, and we are so very lucky to be experiencing it all right there with you. Despite all of the epic success and the achievements of past government-led programs, we do wonder what could have been if the momentum of the Apollo era decades ago had continued uninterrupted. Today, we see a commercial space industry which has rapidly morphed into the machine capable of supporting the increasing demands of its customers by iterative design, quicker launch turnaround, cheaper launch costs, and safer launch vehicles. As a result of all that, we see a fresh and renewed, brighter future for humanity venturing further into space, and like you, I am so thrilled to look forwards to the possibilities unfolding before all of us. We can now, thanks to the private enterprise and less reliance on tax dollars, push onward at a faster pace, not only with our permanent residence in orbit, but also to more far-reaching destinations beyond the safety of our home. So this topic today has been sponsored by Brilliant, and big thanks for their incredible help allowing us to do what we do here on the channel. We obviously love all of this science and math related topics here, and it's not hard to see why. Sadly, these subjects, if not taught correctly, can limit the enthusiasm that can be had from understanding these incredible languages of our universe. What do you think is the best way to learn something? Is it lectures, exercises from a textbook? Well, not for me. Learning something in a practical way has always been the best way I've found to understand, and Brilliant is architected in this exact same way. Explaining the universe we live in means thinking with core scientific principles in mind. Open your eyes to everything around you by solving puzzles here with science. The pressure is off here too, where you can learn at whatever pace is comfortable for you. There are no tests and no grades. You just pick up any area of interest and away you go. You start by having fun with the interactive course components, and before you know it, you'll be amazed at what you've learned. If you're naturally curious and you want to build up those problem-solving skills, then consider checking out Brilliant right here. At the same time, you could join me and a community of 8 million learners and educators by heading to brilliant.org/MarcusHouse. That will give the first 200 people 20% off the first year of Brilliant Premium. You'll find that link in the description below. Also, a huge thank you to my amazing patrons and YouTube members here. There is no way that we can continue doing midweek videos like this at this frequency and length without you all. That support that you all here provide allows us to increase the time that we can spend, and it's all thank you to that growing list right there. Thank you to each and every one of you. If you like what we are doing here and you'd like to join our awesome patrons, head to patreon.com/MarcusHouse, or alternatively, you can now join up as a YouTube member with the join button below. That gives you access to interact with me more directly via the linked roles on our Discord server. You can also have your name listed right here, like all of these other amazing people, and you can have earlier and ad-free access to the videos to watch before anyone else. Big thank you as well to the production crew assisting hugely with the video production, and of course to the quality control squad here for helping me research and proof the material for these videos. If you are interested in all of these topics that we cover here and would like to be a part of it, follow me on Twitter and please do get in touch. In the tile in the bottom left today, we have my video the other week taking a deeper dive into Starship's intended autogenous pressurization systems. In the top right is my latest video, and in the bottom right, content that YouTube has selected from my channel just for you. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.